with beekeeping, municipalities try to regulate us. And that often doesn't work very well. We've had experiences over the past years with Tim and Janet and any number, Chris Yates, any number of other people becoming involved in problems where municipalities are involved in either directly regulating or calling a health department, or we have a problem at a zoning board because people don't know about bees. So last year an initiative was to develop the model ordinance, and that is there. It's a good tool. It's available to be used. But starting about a year ago, we started to talk about getting some legislation through the legislature that would pull back the authority of municipalities to regulate beekeeping and send that authority over to the Department of Agriculture, which is part of the state government. And along with that, with some experiences that we had in Morris County with Landy's case before their County Ag Development Board, we realized that there were problems with the Right to Farm Act. The Right to Farm Act would exempt certain kinds of agricultural activities from regulation by municipalities, and also would exempt those activities from nuisance suits, but only for commercial farms. And commercial farms are defined in the Right to Farm Act very narrowly. And what we've discovered as we worked through trying to get a beekeeper protected there was that because of the income requirements for very small acreage, there are probably only 3 or 4, maybe 5 beekeepers in the whole state that under the current framework of things could avail themselves of right to farm protections, even though there are lots of other kinds of operations that would be able to be protected with rather low levels of agricultural activity compared to what a lot of sideline beekeepers are doing in the state. So about a year ago we started to think about how can we work on the preemption legislation, and then as the year went on we realized that we also needed to work on right to farm. So I'm not entirely sure how it happened, but like, you know, manna from heaven, all of a sudden Janet, as the president, was contacted by Assemblyman Dancer's staff. He's from New Egypt in Ocean County. And she was asked to help develop some legislation that would be good for beekeeping. And again, I don't know where that came from, but maybe somebody back in the background was pulling some levers or making things known to their legislators. The word got there. But what was wonderful was how Janet jumped on that opportunity. And so over the course of last calendar year, in a series of meetings with the Assembly staff and emails back and forth, 2 statutes were developed. One to do the municipal preemption, and the other to do some changes to the definition of commercial farm in the Right to Farm Act, both to help beekeeping. Those statutes were introduced into the Assembly Ag Committee. We had a bunch of co-sponsors, which was really terrific. And while they were in committee, we met with New Jersey Farm Bureau. Janet, myself, Ann and Angela Trapani. And with that meeting, we got some really good guidance from the Farm Bureau about some things that we might want to do to change the legislation, evolve it a little bit to make it more palatable, both to municipalities and also to the Department of Ag and to other constituencies. So we worked with the Assembly to get those changes made in committee. And last year, in the last legislative session, those 2 bills were passed out of the Assembly Committee, and they were also passed out of the Senate Economic Development Committee, which is the committee there that does that. Unfortunately, that all happened during the lame duck session of the legislature. So those 2 bills didn't get posted for a vote. You might remember that, about 4 weeks ago, there was an email that was sent out to everybody asking you to get in touch with your legislators. It was that moment when those bills were out of committee, but waiting to be posted by the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, who control that we were asking for that support to get them posted. Didn't happen. They didn't get voted on. Those bills have been reintroduced. So they're back in committee. We're going to need to work to get them back out of committee. And Monday, Janet's going to be meeting, and I'll be there too, with Assemblyman Dancer's office and the Assemblyman to try to see what we can do to move those forward. Our hope would be that we can get them again out of the committees in both houses and get them posted for a vote this year. Now, why didn't they get posted back in the last session? They didn't get posted in the last session for two reasons. The preemption bill sparked some resistance from the interest group for the municipalities out there, called the League of Municipalities. So that's essentially a lobbying organization that has a voice at the legislature that raised its hand and said, wait a minute, you're taking power away from the towns. We don't like that on general principles, and we don't think you should post this. That's the point of resistance on that. And I think principally it's that issue that we're going to be addressing on Monday with the Assemblyman. It's a real issue, and it's an issue on which I think everyone here can really be very helpful, because if you write to emails, calls, letters to your representatives, your elected representatives, and tell them how important it is that we have uniform standards for beekeeping, that we don't let every town dream up its own restrictions. I was hearing at lunch, I think, one town has adopted a beekeeping regulation that says that if you don't have a marked queen, you're in violation. And that would be kind of hard in my operation, because most of the time my bees swarm and I have natural queens, and it just wouldn't work. We can use your help in working against that pushback from the League of Municipalities. If you can write to your legislators, call their offices, email them, and tell them how important it is. If any of you are in contact with legislators, to talk about how important it would be to have this available, and to have the Department of Agriculture developing the standards that would be governing beekeeping all around the state. Now, what we did with that legislation, at the suggestion of Farm Bureau, and I think it was quite brilliant actually, was we said, great, the department's going to adopt the standards, but towns can adopt them by reference and then enforce them, so towns aren't completely out of business. So that's an important point to make with your legislators when you talk to them, which is, yes, the standards are going to be developed by the people who have real expertise, but that doesn't take towns out of the business of making sure that things are done properly within their boundaries. And that's an important give back there. The other bill, the Right to Farm bill, that got resistance from some people within the agriculture community who were concerned about a dilution of the Right to Farm Act's powers, shall we say. They didn't like the idea that we were going to do a special carve-out for one commodity group, for one group piece of agriculture, under the umbrella of Right to Farm, and change the standards just for that group. This past week was the Agriculture Convention. By the way, I want to back up for a minute and say that with the help of the Trapanis, Jeff, other people from this organization who have another role where they sit on county boards of agriculture, at the Farm Bureau convention this past fall, resolutions were adopted that said that it's now Farm Bureau's policy to support those legislative initiatives that are coming from here, which is a wonderful thing because it gets that interest group behind us. And what I can tell you is that when we then go to a legislative committee or something's on the floor, representatives of Farm Bureau who are respected lobbyists raise their hand and say, we support this. We think this is a good idea. So that's extremely helpful to us. So if you can be involved in your county boards of agriculture, which is Farm Bureau, that's a good thing. Back to Right to Farm. This past week, there was the State Agriculture Convention. And civics again for a minute. New Jersey's constitutional structure is kind of odd because we have a Secretary of Agriculture who is part of the governor's cabinet, but he's actually nominated by the State Board of Agriculture. The State Board of Agriculture are farmers who are elected by farmers to be a sort of a guiding body. And every year they have a convention, which just happened in Atlantic City, where those farmers are elected and where policies are set for the Department of Agriculture for the coming year. And what I can tell you is that this was an extraordinarily successful convention for beekeepers because with, again, the help of the Trapanis and Jeff and many other people in, I'll call it regular old agriculture, who recognize the importance of bees and beekeeping, we got the resolutions, we got 2 resolutions supporting the bills that we have up in the Assembly to be passed by the Ag Convention. So that now means that the rest of agriculture in the state has gotten behind our legislation, and it is now going to need to be the official policy of the Department of Agriculture staffers, who were in some quarters a source of resistance to our legislation, to support our legislation as it moves through the legislature and moves to the governor's office. So that's extremely successful. Got to tell you, it was really helpful that the Trapanis had New Jersey Beekeepers Association honey on every table at the dinner the night before the vote. That really was pretty good stuff. But also there were a lot of people who shook hands and talked to people in elevators and sort of convinced people about where things have to go. So the next steps for us are going to be back in the legislature, back in the respective committees in the 2 houses, work them through there. We'll be working on that in the coming weeks. It will be extremely helpful to have the support of members of the association to talk to legislators, write to them, make it known how important it is to pass these, and then we'll get them up hopefully on the floor. And the generality, you know, all the rest of the legislators who have a vote will vote on them. Once there's a vote, we hope it's affirmative. It would then go to the governor's office, and we'll have to work with the governor's office some more to get him to sign it into law. Janet's already corresponded with his office, answered some questions. I'm sure there'll be more, but I think we're moving ahead. Anything else, Janet?
No, I think that's pretty
Do they
Okay.
have names or numbers?
We'll send out an email.
Yeah, we'll send out emails with all your legislative contacts. Questions from anybody about where we are, what we're doing? Mike?
Have the bill numbers changed?
Yes, they have. They have new numbers. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was, are there new bill numbers? I think last session they were 4261 and 4262.
I'll send out the numbers.
Janet tells me she's going to send out an email that specifies the bill numbers that they currently have. Other questions? Okay.
Hey, if anybody knows anybody on the SADC, get a hold of them.
Yeah, that's a good place to go too.
That's the one we gotta convince.
SADC, sure.
What
Yep.
is that, SADC?
The SADC is the State Agriculture Development Committee. The SADC is in but not of the Department of Agriculture, so they're a little out of the chain of command that we just sorted out at the convention. And that's the body that directly governs the right to farm process. And here's right to farm matters at the state level. So yeah, Angela, you're quite correct. If you know people that sit on that and can get in touch with them and lobby them a bit, that would probably be helpful too. Anybody else? Sir?
As a suggestion, I don't know, I've never seen a person from you directly. Does MJ Beekeepers have a Facebook and a Twitter feed? And if so, we should be sending out information that way. Then those who have Facebook and Twitter accounts can pass it on to their friends and get more people involved.
2 members of the Northeast branch have started a Facebook page in support of the beekeepers legislation. So I'll put that information in the email that I send out, but there is a Facebook page for the legislation, thanks to the 2 members from Northeast.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Curtis?
Janet, would you make sure that when emails go out from the website regarding legislation that really indicated and such, because we get a number of emails here and here, and those should stand out.
Okay, legislation will be in the subject line.
Janet, repeat what he said.
He wanted to know, could I clearly mark the emails from the website that are concerning the legislation? So they'll have legislation in the subject line. Jeff?
I just for a moment want to personally thank Ann and Angelo, as well as Dave, for all their hard work for the past year. They've done a
Yeah.
spectacular job. So